Polls have closed in the state of Alabama. The results are coming in now, trickling in. They'll be on your screen all night. The race, for the first time in many years, could go either way at any time, so stay right here. We'll be updating you all night. Ryan Lizza of The New Yorker was fired yesterday, the latest casualty of the hunt for sexual harassers in American life. The magazine described Liz's crime as, quote, improper sexual conduct, but it did not elaborate beyond that, nor did it name his accuser, who remains anonymous. Lizza issued a statement proclaiming his innocence. Quote, The New Yorker was unable to cite a company policy that was violated, he wrote. But that didn't matter. Lizza lost the job he'd held for over a decade anyway. He was suspended from his role at CNN, as well as his adjunct professorship at Georgetown. Ryan Lizza's in his 40s, but his career is effectively over now. The same has happened to plenty of other people recently on the basis of sexual harassment claims. In just the past week, TV chef Mario Batali was pulled off the air. Steve Edwards of Good Day LA is gone. 5 analysts at NFL Network and ESPN were suspended. And of course, Al Franken is about to leave the Senate. There are a lot of other ones, too. Now, maybe all of these people are guilty as charged. Sexual harassment is real and apparently common. So it could be. How common is it? Well, it would be nice to know that, but that would require facts, which are one of the many things these cases lack, along with names and dates and the specific nature of the crimes alleged. Details matter because, in the end, they add up to proof. Proof is what ensures that the innocent aren't punished, and protecting the innocent is the very essence of Western justice. Unfortunately, we are moving in the opposite direction, toward a standard where to be accused means to be judged guilty. This is not a defense of sexual harassment, obviously, just an acknowledgement that it's terrifying, really terrifying. In a recent piece for Politico, Emily Yaffe explains how we got here. It turns out it did not start with Harvey Weinstein exactly, but with the last administration. At the beginning of this decade, the Obama administration launched a campaign to stamp out sexual assault on college campuses. The goal was laudable, obviously, but the means were horrifying. Using Title IX as a regulatory cudgel, the administration pressured colleges to lower the burden of proof for sexual misconduct and urged them to create kangaroo courts that denied basic rights to students like access to counsel and the ability to face and question accusers. Within a few years, it became normal to view sexual misconduct as a special class of crime where no presumption of innocence was warranted. Accusation equaled conviction. 2 years ago, Democratic Congressman Jared Polis of Colorado put it as clearly as anyone ever has. Quote, if there are 10 people who have been accused and maybe 1 or 2 did it, it seems better to get rid of all 10 people. In other words, it's okay to punish the innocent. If you want an omelet, you've got to break some eggs. That was Robespierre's line. It's been echoed by totalitarian dictators ever since. It's pretty jarring to hear it from a U.S. congressman in this country. On campuses, students were humiliated and expelled on the basis of no evidence they had done anything wrong. In one case, at the University of North Dakota, a student was tossed out for sexual assault even as his accuser was prosecuted for lying to police about the same incident. Now, at the time, many on the right allied with civil libertarians to decry this as a basic attack on the precepts of justice, which it was. And yet now those same groups are silent mostly. Some are even cheering along because this time the victims primarily are liberal journalists, politicians, and media personalities. A lot of these seem like odious people anyway, and it's gratifying to see them hounded from public life. That's a mistake. Principles matter, even when they protect people you don't like. If some annoying magazine writer can lose everything over an anonymous, unproven charge, it can happen to you too, and it might. In a brilliant new piece in The American Interest, a writer called Claire Berlinski sums up the reality we're now living in. Quote, it now takes only one accusation to destroy a man's life. Just one for him to be tried and sentenced in the court of public opinion, overnight costing him his livelihood and social respectability. We are on a frenzied extrajudicial warlock hunt that does not pause to parse the difference between rape and stupidity. The punishment for sexual harassment is so grave that clearly this crime, like any other serious crime, requires an unambiguous definition. We have nothing of the sort. Well, we're living through a moral panic, obviously. And as Berlinski points out, we have seen this before. Again, a quote from her. Not long ago, we firmly convinced ourselves that our children were being ritually raped by Satanists. In recent years especially, we've become prone to replacing complex thought with shallow slogans. We live in times of extremism and black and white thinking. We should have the self-awareness to suspect that events of recent weeks may not be an aspect of our growing enlightenment, but rather our growing enamorment with extremism. Now, you may not agree with her point, but I think you'll acknowledge it's smart and thoughtful and worth debating. Berlinski says she could barely get it published. Editors kept turning it down. In this environment, they were too afraid to print her essay, and that tells you everything. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York has tried to make herself a leader in this sexual assault crusade and recently got into a tiff with the president over it. Michelle Jawando is an attorney at the Center for American Progress.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I just, look, I'll put up a lot. Being lectured by Kirsten Gillibrand about sexual harassment after she spent, 10 years covering for Bill Clinton, who was credibly accused 2 decades ago of sexual assault, rape, is too much. I mean, why should I take my moral cues on this question from someone who's as cynical as that?
So Senator Gillibrand was actually in a bipartisan Bible study group when her phone rang when she found out that the President of the United States, with the biggest bully pulpit in the world, was attacking her on Twitter. And so I think the question and where we could really begin the conversation is that really the decorum that we want our president to be engaging? And as
the answer is simply no.
With daughters, he needs to be able to say, there's an epidemic in this country around sexual assault and sexual harassment, and I want to do something to fix
But why should, look, I'm against the president tweeting about anything
that
ever.
Was great. I'm so happy to hear.
But I'm against most people tweeting about anything ever. I'm against tweeting.
Yeah.
But let me just say
You're
this.
Anti-Twitter.
Why, of everyone in Washington, should someone who covered for Bill Clinton, who refused to say anything about her colleague Anthony Weiner when asked about his sexual misdeeds, who has covered for Linda Sarsour, who's just an open misogynist who wants Sharia law and has attacked the victims of female genital mutilation, why would that person get the right to lecture me about anything?
Tucker, Kirsten Gillibrand, you know that I've worked in the Senate with her for many years before I went to the Center for American Progress. And one of the things that I am most proud of to this day is the bipartisan work we did on the 9/11 health bill. That was something we did with Senator Coburn, who was one of the most conservative, fiscally and otherwise, Republicans in the Senate. And the reason why Republicans work with Senator Gillibrand is because they know she's a hard worker. She's working.
I don't doubt that for a second. I'm not attacking her as a person. I'm just saying, why does she get to lecture the rest of us on a subject that she hasn't proven faithful on? And I want to ask you a question I've always wondered. So she's got a full rating from Planned Parenthood, which has said out loud, yeah, we'll commit sex-selective abortions designed to basically cull female babies. If you're a feminist, how in the world can you support sex-selective abortions? I've never understood that. A sincere question.
So I appreciate the question. I don't think that that's actually true, Tucker.
It is true.
If you go and you do any research, I don't think anyone would say that Planned Parenthood is pushing that as
They're not. They said that they are not. That they are okay with it. They've said it out loud.
Is to provide contraceptive care, health coverage for women in this country. And I know, as difficult as it is for us to recognize, Roe is a constitutionally protected right.
Do sex-selective abortions bother you?
And if we are really going to be honest in this country, we have to recognize, abortion is a right protected by this Constitution.
Sex-selective abortions, and we're feminists now. Okay.
But Senator Gillibrand, back to the
We're out of time. I'll give you the last word, though, since you're so.
I will say this: Senator Gillibrand is someone who I've seen one of the hardest working people across the aisle. And if we as a country really want to value women, we have to figure out this issue around sexual assault.
Yeah, I totally believe that. I've got 3 daughters. I'm all for valuing women.
That's
I'm
why
just
we
not
can
for
fix
Kirsten
it.
Gillibrand, because I think she's false. But thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
The family members of the New York City bombing suspects say they are outraged by how the police have treated them. Do they have a right to be? Plus, new results from Alabama's special Senate election continue to come through Fox throughout the night, and we'll bring them to you as soon as they do.
Prime Minister, we're facing